Okay. So, good morning, everybody. All you brave ones who didn't sleep until noon on Sunday, but chose to come to the Dharma and, learn something that will really benefit you in this and future lives. So, very good. So, today, we'll start out with the recitations and some silent meditation as usual. And then we'll go in to talk about rebirth, okay? Because rebirth, if we're talking about the foundation of Buddhist practice, the notion of rebirth is really key. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been asked, must somebody accept rebirth before taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha? And he said, strictly speaking, that would be necessary, but in his view, he wants to open things as much as possible to other people. And so in the West, anyway, he says it's fine if somebody doesn't accept rebirth to take refuge in the three jewels, okay? But really, if you think about it, it's going to be very difficult to make a sense of the path in the long term without having the idea of rebirth in there. Because like I said yesterday, if there's just this lifetime and at death then there's nothing that follows, then why practice the path to attain enlightenment? And if everything ends at death time, then the solution to suffering is suicide, which I don't think many people would really advocate. But this is, people who experience extreme suffering and suicide, this is what they're thinking, that at the end of this life there's nothing, so by killing themselves they're stopping their suffering. But from a Buddhist viewpoint, they're just going on to another state of suffering, especially if they die with a mind of depression and despair and anger, then the prognosis is not good for a good rebirth. Yeah, so Buddhism certainly doesn't advocate suicide as a solution to our problems. Yeah, which, if there were no rebirth, it would make sense to do that. Yeah, which is really quite horrifying if you think about it. Yeah? So, and I'm saying this because of this trend that we see. I heard some Singaporeans talk like this, as well as people in the West, that, we want to rid Buddhism of all the make-believe. Yeah, and so rebirth is kind of make-believe. Or they say the Buddha didn't really teach rebirth. It's quite clear if you read the sutras, the Buddha definitely taught rebirth. And he definitely taught the existence of other life forms and different realms. Yeah? So this whole movement towards secular Buddhism, I think, is a little bit off-kilter. Not a little bit off-kilter, very off-kilter. Okay? So, I think delving into the proof of rebirth, which, like I said, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says can be proven by reasoning. It's not something we have to accept on blind faith, although it may take us a while to understand the reasoning and accept the reasoning. Still, it's something that can be explained logically. Yeah? And when we really think about it, in a logical way, then yeah, we can accept it. And then even other people come along and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, we just say, I do. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think the whole idea of rebirth, I mean, to me, personally, it made a lot of sense. And it's one of the things that made me become a Buddhist. Because before being a Buddhist, you know, I had gone into a period of just kind of being quite cynical about religion and throwing all of religion out. And then when I started learning the Dharma, you know, and heard about rebirth, I went, oh, this makes sense. Then there's a purpose to life. Then there's a meaning to life. Because before that, I thought, you know, what's the meaning of my life? Am I just going to replicate my parents' life? You know, graduate, get a job, have kids, progress up the ladder, making more money, have grandkids if I manage to live that old, and then die. And what's the purpose? You know, I didn't see that kind of life as having any long-term purpose or meaning. Yeah. Whereas when we hear about samsara, being caught in cyclic existence due to our ignorance, yeah, and this constantly recurring rebirth in which the nature is dukkha, unsatisfactory, then I could see that, you know, happening even in this lifetime. And I said, wow, you know, then there's really a purpose to life. It's not just trying to run around and get pleasure and help my friends and harm my enemies. Yeah, there's something more to life. And especially when I heard about the possibility of attaining Buddhahood, and I heard about the bodhicitta and the idea that we could cherish other living beings limitlessly and gain the powers to really work for their benefit, then it was like, wow, my life really has meaning and purpose now. You know, even if I can't attain full awakening in this lifetime, I can at least go in that direction. And, you know, that's certainly better than, you know, working in an office until I have to retire. You know, it's like it gives just much more vibrancy and vitality and meaning to life. You know? And so all of that is actually, you know, that whole Buddhist view is based on accepting rebirth. Yeah? Because, you know, if we think bodhicitta is something really wonderful and noble and fantastic, you know, then, and bodhicitta is wanting to attain awakening so that we can help liberate all living beings from samsara. If you don't believe in rebirth, then you can't believe in samsara, then you can't liberate sentient beings. So bodhicitta has no meaning then. Yeah, bodhicitta just becomes being a nice person, which I'm not knocking. It's good to be a nice person, you know? But I think when we really investigate what bodhicitta is, that goes so far beyond being a nice person and completely opens up the possibility of being a very different kind of person than we are right now. A person whose life is really valuable and meaningful to other living beings. And I think all of us would much rather have a valuable, meaningful life, wouldn't we? yeah, then just kind of go along, da, da, da. Okay? So, all this kind of hinges on the notion of rebirth. And rebirth itself hinges on the notion of there being mind. Okay? And I remember talking with Thubten Jinpa, he's one of His Holiness's translators. We talked about this many years ago, and he was saying, this is the area where science falls short, because science doesn't understand what the mind is. And science, by and large, many scientists don't accept the existence of mind. They accept the existence of the brain and the functioning of the brain. But when you say mind, they kind of go like this, yeah? And so if you Google brain, you get so many, things to click on. If you Google mind, many less, okay? And so you find some scientists, the scientific reductionists, who say there's no mind. Everything that we consider consciousness is actually brain activity. Yeah. So, you just study the brain. But that's really unsatisfactory because, for many reasons actually, because we're sentient beings who experience pain and pleasure. And how can you say our brain experiences pain or pleasure? Our brain is only a physical organism. Granted, if you have a concussion or you drill a hole in the skull or something, the brain has nerves cells and you'll experience pain, but that's physical pain, okay? But the brain itself doesn't experience pain or pleasure. There may be correlations of brain activity with our experience, okay? So there's areas of the brain that are active when we experience different emotions, and areas of the brain that are active when we think about different things, and different areas of the brain that are active, when we see and hear and smell and taste and touch, okay? But those correlate with the mind. The brain itself isn't what experiences and cognizes. Okay, so at one of the early Mind and Life conferences between His Holiness and scientists, there were a couple of scientific reductionists there who really stated, there's just what is physical, nothing more to human beings than the physical. And so at the end of the day after they left, a few of us Buddhists were there, and we could just imagine, when they, when they're at home with their spouse, and their spouse says, "I love you, dear," and then they go, "Wait, I need to take an EEG and a galvanic skin response and see what area of your brain is lighting up, and that way I'll see if you really love me or not." Yeah? Because the brain is all there is. So that's how you're going to test if somebody loves you. And if the brain were really what experienced emotions, then, you put a brain out on the table. Okay, if the brain were the mind and you put the brain out on the table, then when you fell in love with somebody, you could look at their brain and say, Oh, I love that brain. Look at those gray folds. They're so magnificent. You know, I love you. Huh? Do you love somebody's brain? Yeah, but that's what we would have to say if we said there was no mind and, you know, all cognitive functions were simply the brain. Okay. Now, some scientists aren't scientific reductionists, saying there's only the physical. They say the mind is the emergent property of the body or of the brain. And I'm not quite sure what emergent property means. It somehow means that the mind came out of the brain. And I remember asking one scientist about that. I said, what does it mean it's an emergent property? Because this is what he believed. And he said, well, just as, you know, life on the planet started out in the water and with living beings in the water, and then they evolved into living beings on land, or just as we started out with single cell beings, which I don't know if they have consciousness or not, but anyway, you know, and then evolved to more complexity, then in that way, based on having a brain, the mind evolves or comes out of it. And that doesn't work from a Buddhist viewpoint because the brain and the mind have two completely different natures. Yeah, the brain is a physical entity, and you can measure it with scientific instruments. The mind is not a physical entity. You cannot measure it with scientific instruments. And so this could be one of the reasons why scientists don't really know what the mind is, because the mind cannot be measured by microscopes and telescopes and, you know, electrical impulses and chemical combinations, because the mind is what experiences, what cognizes, what makes us a living being. Okay? So how many of you have seen a dead body? Yeah. So there's a difference between a dead body and a live person, isn't there? Yeah. When you see a dead body, something's missing. Something is not there. Okay? What is not there is consciousness. Yeah. The consciousness, the mind, has left the body. And so the body is just some organic goo, basically. Okay? The body gets recycled in nature, but the atoms and molecules get dispersed and recombine with other substances and become something new. But the consciousness is not the body. And it has its own continuum. Yeah? And that continuum goes on to future lives. Okay. So, that's a little bit of an introduction. Yeah. Whet your appetite to know about the mind and rebirth. We'll do the recitations now. So it is our mind that is doing the recitations. It's not your serotonin. It's not your dopamine. It's not your neuron, whatever they're called, you know. it's your consciousness. Yeah? So we're going to visualize in the space in front, the Buddha's surrounded by all the living beings, by all the other holy beings, the Buddha, the other Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and ourselves surrounded by all other sentient beings. And this activity is going on in our mind. Yeah? The brain may be a cooperative cause, but the visualization is taking place in our mind. So really feel that like you're sitting in the presence of the holy beings who really want to help you. They want to help you gain realizations of the path and attain non-abiding nirvana and Buddhahood. And from our side, we want to follow their guidance, and we want to lead all other living beings in following their guidance as well. So we imagine leading all the living beings around us, friends, enemies, strangers, everybody. Yeah, we imagine leading them in taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, doing the 7 limbs and everything else that happens.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the Great Awakening.
And then before we offer the mandala, think that you're offering the entire universe along with requesting to receive the teachings. So really feel that you value the Buddha's teachings so much that you're willing to give the entire universe as well as everything wonderful in it as an offering in order to receive the teachings. So create a mind that really values the Dharma that much.
This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, and strangers, my body, wealth, and enjoyments, I offer these without any sense of loss. Please accept them with pleasure and inspire me and others to be free from the three poisonous attitudes. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami.
And then a replica of the Buddha comes on top of your head, on top of the heads of all the sentient beings around you. And again, we request inspiration from the lineage masters, from the Buddha, all the way down to our own teachers.
Glorious and precious Root Guru, sit upon the lotus and moon seat on my crown. Guiding me with your great kindness, bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind. The eyes through whom the vast scriptures are seen, supreme doors for the fortunate who would cross over to spiritual freedom. Illuminators whose wise means vibrate with compassion. To the entire line of spiritual mentors, I make request.
And then as we recite the Buddha's mantra, light flows from the Buddha on top of all of our heads, and that light flows down, entering us through the crown of our head. First there being white light that we think purifies all negativities, and then golden light that brings all realizations.
Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye Soha. 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 Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye Soha.
Then go into some meditation. You can do breathing meditation if you wish, or some kind of Lama meditation. let's generate our motivation to transform our mind. So because the mind is impermanent, because it's produced by, each moment of mind is produced by its own causes and conditions, if we change the causes and conditions, then the resulting mental states will also change. So we want to condition our mind in love and compassion and wisdom, and cut the causes of the mental factors that are non-virtuous, such as ignorance, anger, and animosity. So this is a process that each individual must do by themselves. No one else can transform our minds. But we can influence and help and guide others. So just as we take refuge in the three jewels and accept their guidance on the path, let's develop the bodhicitta aspiration to become the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha ourselves, so that we can help and influence others along the path to full awakening as well. So generate that long-term intention for what we're going to do today. And let your mind expand to include all living beings in your compassion, and let your mind expand to include full awakening as a possibility for yourself, and let your mind expand so that you can imagine being of great benefit to all living beings, both temporarily and in the long term. So to understand rebirth and samsara, we have to understand what the mind is. And His Holiness began in volume 1 of the series, Approaching the Buddhist Path, talking about what the mind is. He also talked about it in volume 2 here. If anybody has volume 1 with them, then I would like to read you the part from volume 1, because His Holiness's style, as I said yesterday, he really gives us the nitty-gritty, that we need to understand, even if it's kind of advanced. Yeah, because the philosophy in the way, the understanding in the way that our teachers guide us is that so much of our Dharma understanding comes through repetition, through planting the seeds, through hearing something repeatedly, thinking about it repeatedly, meditating on it repeatedly. Yeah. So, anybody have volume 1? Thank you. Okay, thanks. So, there's part in volume 1, there's part in volume 2, there's part in volume 3, because the whole path is about the mind, transforming our mind. And by transforming our mind, we transform the kind of body we have and the kind of speech that we communicate with. Okay. So, okay. So it's in chapter 2. You can see first volume, second chapter. He starts in with this. Okay? So, and I must say, in editing this book and writing it, and going over the material again and again, it really has had an effect on my mind. And I it will be nice when the whole series is done, and then I can sit and just read it without having to look for grammatical mistakes and typos and sentences that, don't make sense. Yeah. Okay. So His Holiness begins. Our mind determines our state of existence. Do you notice he starts out things with one short sentence that is like, pow. Our mind determines the state of our existence. Who we are, what we experience, what we're reborn as. Yeah. It's not due to some external manager or divine being in the universe. It's due to our mind. This is a vital Buddhist principle. Yeah. Someone with a mind stained by afflictions is a being in samsara. Someone who has eradicated all afflictive obscurations. Okay, those are mental afflictions and the karma causing rebirth in samsara, is a liberated being, an arhat. Someone whose mind has eliminated even the subtlest cognitive obscurations is a Buddha. This is determined by the extent to which that person's mind has been purified. In this regard, the sublime continuum, Lama, okay? I think it's in the basic program that some of you are studying, okay? So that text. The sublime continuum speaks of 3 types of beings: polluted beings who revolve in cyclic existence, unpolluted beings who do not revolve in cyclic existence, and completely unpolluted beings who are Buddhas. Which one are you? I'm a polluted being. Yeah? A person's level of spiritual attainment does not depend on external features, but on his or her state of mind. So it doesn't matter what you look like, okay? If you're young or old, attractive or not attractive, what race, what ethnicity, what sexual orientation, what gender, none of that matters. It's the state of our mind that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Although we can practice Buddhist meditation and apply its psychology to our lives without being Buddhists, understanding the Buddhist worldview is essential to glean the full impact of the Buddha's teachings. In this chapter, we will investigate some of the most important aspects of the Buddhist worldview: the nature of the mind, the self, the four truths of the Aryas, dependent arising and emptiness, and the possibility of ending suffering. So we'll only do the first two sections here on the mind, and then we'll go to the volume 2. So the first section here is, what is mind? Modern science focuses principally on gaining knowledge about the external world of matter. Right? Scientists have developed sophisticated tools to manipulate even subatomic particles and have created instruments to measure minute changes in the chemical and electrical states of neurons. We now know about stars light years away from Earth and tiny organisms that our eyes cannot see. While science has made great strides in understanding the external world, matter and its subatomic components, it has not given as much attention to the inner world of the mind, consciousness, and experience. Science lacks a cohesive concept of mind, its nature, causes, and potential. And while there are many books about the anatomy and physiology of the brain, the mind is rarely mentioned. So His Holiness has great respect for science. Yeah, and he really says that science, like Buddhism, is aimed at gaining understanding the truth, and that, you know, we have to be willing to revise our ideas if we can prove something contrary to what we've believed before. And he says this even about what's written in the Buddhist scriptures. But he also recognizes that science, like he says here, is interested in the external world and doesn't pay much attention to the internal world of our thoughts, our feelings. Okay. Nowadays, many people who think about the mind explain it in terms of material phenomena. Neurologists portray it in terms of the actions of neurons, especially those in the brain. Behavioral psychologists describe it by referring to a person's deeds and speech. Cognitive scientists study perception, thinking, and mental processes in terms of external, measurable behavior and brain activity. The difficulties with these models is that they do not give us any means to accurately or deeply understand experience. Yeah. And in many ways, scientists do not consider experience as valid evidence of something. Yeah, they don't rely on anecdotes to establish something. They want to see some kind of physical, measurable data to believe something. But from a Buddhist viewpoint, there's many things that we can't know by use of that data. Scientists may tell us about the neural events in the brain, the hormonal reactions that accompanies compassion or anger, and people's behavior when they are angry, but this does not convey what these emotions feel like, what the experience of them is. Other people speak of the mind as an immaterial, permanent self or spirit, but they too are not able to suggest tools to observe consciousness. The Buddha's teachings may be considered a science of mind in that they provide a complete study of the mind, setting forth specific means for observing it, delineating the various types of consciousness and mental factors, making known the mind's potential, and describing ways to transform the mind. The nature of mind is not material. Okay? It's not made of atoms and molecules. You can't touch or smell or see your mind. The mind lacks the tangible quality of physical objects. While mind and brain are related and affect each other when a person is alive, the mind is distinct from the physical organ of the brain, which is matter and can be investigated with scientific instruments that measure physical events. But the mind is what experiences. Okay? The mind is what makes us a sentient being and not an inanimate object. The mind is what experiences. It is what makes an organism sentient. Those of us who have sat with the body of a deceased loved one know that while his or her brain is still there, something else is missing. What is no longer present is the mind, the agent that experiences what life presents and is the essential differentiating factor between a corpse and a living being. The presence or absence of the mind, of consciousness, is what differentiates a corpse and a living being. Yeah. Buddhism has a 2,600-year history of investigating the mind. Many treatises about the mind were written in ancient India, where the Buddha lived, as well as in the countries to which Buddhism has spread throughout the centuries. In recent years, fruitful dialogue between Buddhists and scientists has begun, and I have great interest in seeing how this dialogue develops and the positive contributions to the well-being of sentient beings that it will produce. And since His Holiness started having dialogues with the scientists in the late 1980s, there's been a real explosion of interest in a new field called contemplative science, where the scientists are studying brain activity when people have certain emotions or when they meditate and so on. So they're still focused on the brain and on behavior, but they're kind of inching towards thinking about the mind, yeah. Although this is always the sticky point in the Buddhist scientist dialogues, is what is the mind? Okay. Every topic in this series relates to the mind. We will look at the mind from many perspectives: its nature, causes, potential, functions, levels, and so on. Okay, so some of you may have studied low-rig, mind and awareness. I think that's probably in the basic program. Okay, when you study serenity or shamatha, how to develop concentration and different levels of meditative absorption, you're studying the mind. When we talk about the antidotes to afflictions, we're studying the mind and what causes the afflictions to arise, what their nature is, what the results of them are. Okay, so all throughout the Buddhism, whatever you're studying has to relate to the mind. Yeah? Because we are sentient beings, and we have a body, and we have a mind. But of the two, our mind is the most important, because at least speaking in terms of the gross body does not go from life to life. Yeah, it ends at this life. It is recycled in nature. Yeah, but the mind continues. So it's interesting, isn't it, that although the mind is what is most important to understand, most of our life and most of our education is concerning the body and the external world. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. When you think about it, most of our activity during the day, there's a lot of feedback here. Can we do something about it? Most of our activity during the day depends on, is related to keeping our body alive and giving pleasure to the body. Okay? So, why do you get an education? To go to work. Why do you go to work? To earn money. Why do you earn money? So that you can get the food, shelter, clothing, and medicine that are the 4 requisites of life, so you can stay alive. Yeah. And then on top of that, so that you can get all sorts of other things that bring pleasure to the body. Yeah. And most of our daily activities are designed either to keep the body alive, prevent it from being painful, or giving it pleasure. Yeah? And we don't always study our mind. What is going on inside of us? Yeah, it's amazing how little we understand about the mind, which is what makes us a sentient being. Okay, there's still feedback. Hint, hint. Okay, the Sanskrit word translated as mind may also be translated as heart. Okay, so the same word, sem or lo, yeah, we can say, thank you, that's much better. We can say that somebody has a good mind and somebody has a good heart. In English, the 2 phrases have different meanings. But in Sanskrit, Tibetan, Pali, it's the same word for mind. Mind and heart come together. Mind is not just the intellect, it's our heart. From a Buddhist perspective, expressions like he has a kind heart or her mind is very intelligent both refer to the same entity, the conscious, experiential part of a living being. Although our mind is right here with us and we use it all the time, we don't understand it very well. Do you understand your emotions very well? Yeah? Do you have all sorts of emotions? Angry, delighted, loving, fed up, frustrated. Do you understand what makes these arise? Yeah? And what makes them cease? And what in the world they are to start with? Yeah, we experience them. But we don't stop to investigate that experience and understand it. In the Buddha Dharma, the mind is defined as that which is clarity and cognizance. Clarity indicates that unlike the body, the mind is not material. Okay, this is very important. It's not material. Clarity also indicates that when the mind meets with certain conditions, it is able to reflect objects like a clear mirror. Okay, so the definition of mind, that which is clear and cognizant. Okay, so clear, formless, not immaterial, and yet it can reflect objects. And then the quality of cognizance means it can engage with or cognize the object. Okay. The table does not have clarity and awareness, clarity and cognizance. Why? It's material. It also cannot reflect objects. It cannot engage objects. It does not experience pain and pleasure. It does not revolve in samsara, and the table cannot attain Buddhahood. Sorry. Okay. So there's a difference here. From our own experience, we know that our mind changes from moment to moment. That quality of changeability indicates that our mind is under the influence of causes and conditions. So yesterday we talked about causes and conditions. Yeah, we said all polluted phenomena. No, we said all conditioned phenomena are, produced by causes and conditions. Okay, so each moment of mind arises due to its own unique cause, the previous moment of mind. That the mind is a continuum, a series of mind moments that we call a mind stream or a mental continuum. Each being has his or her own mind stream. Mind streams or parts of individual mind streams do not merge. Okay, so we each have our own continuity of consciousness. Yeah, we are not a product of different parts of different people's consciousness that merge together to form our mental continuum. Each of us has our own mental continuum. Yeah, but that mental continuum does not exist inherently. It is not a soul. It is not a permanent self. Okay, it's impermanent. Yeah, arising and ceasing in every moment. Because the mind is influenced by other factors and changes in each moment, when the appropriate conditions are present, mental transformation occurs. A mind that is flooded with disturbing emotions can become one that is peaceful and joyful. Okay? So we can change, and change involves creating different causes and conditions that will bring about different mental states. Yeah? So that's a lot of what our spiritual practice is about. It's about creating causes and conditions to bring the kind of results that we want. Yeah? So it's everything, this whole idea of dependent arising, of things arising dependent on other factors, such as causes and conditions. The Buddha, His Holiness, once said that if the Buddha had a slogan or a brand, it would be dependent arising. Okay? The Buddha's brand. Dependent arising. Yeah? So our mind is a dependent arising. We're trying to plant different causes and conditions in it. Yeah? And so our practice, I always recommend to people, let's focus on creating the causes for realizations and the path. And be content to create the causes without worrying when the results are going to come. Yeah? Because we start practicing the path, and it's like, well, I've meditated every morning for a whole week. You know, I should have some realizations by now. You know, they say that, you know, once you enter the bodhisattva path, which begins when you have spontaneous bodhicitta whenever you see any sentient being. I don't know about you, but I'm nowhere near that. Anyway, the path starts from where you have that. From there until Buddhahood, if you follow the Paramitayana path, 3 countless great eons. Okay? So it's going to take a while to create all the causes and conditions. If we are impatient and we want push-button awakening, you know, because we live in the modern age and, you know, we don't have much time to mess around practicing the Dharma. You know, it's on our list. We have a list of what we're going to do today. Practice Dharma. We got it on our list, finally. But it's not our whole day. And I want to get this enlightenment business done and over with so I can go on to something else. Okay? Because I have limited time. Yeah? It's pretty ridiculous how we think, isn't it? Yeah? Even thinking I've been practicing for 3 years. Yeah? Why haven't I had a vision of the Buddha yet? Yeah? It's going to take us a while. We need to be content with creating the causes. And the result will come when all the causes are created. We don't need to worry about that. Yeah. So when you plant flowers, which I know most Singaporeans don't do, because in Singapore you plant asphalt and concrete. Yeah, not so many flowers. But if you planted flowers, which try, you know, on your balcony, it's good. You know, plant some flowers, water them, add fertilizer. When all the causes and conditions are ready, those seeds will become sprouts. Those sprouts will eventually bring forth flowers. You don't need to dig the seed up every day to begin to see if it's sprouted or not. Yeah. You just create the causes and let it grow on its own. So that's the same way we need to regard our practice. Focus on creating the causes. Don't obsess about the results. Yeah? And don't compare yourself to anybody else. I know that's hard because we've been taught in school that we always have to compete and compare because we've got to be better than other people, so we got to get to enlightenment before them. Yeah. And get our enlightenment diploma. Yeah, and then frame it and put it in our office. You know, our mentality for approaching the path has to be completely different. Yeah, we're not competing with anybody. And in fact, if somebody else gets enlightened before we do, how wonderful that is. Then they can help us. Yeah. There's no contest about it, okay? We're each just following the path, helping and supporting each other. Yeah. When we compete with other people, we create obstacles for them. Yeah, because we want to be better. When we have a Dharma mind, we create supportive conditions for others because we want everybody to succeed in the path. Okay? So you see the whole different way we need to learn to think if we're going to practice the path. We can't take our old mentality in and start competing with everybody else. And you see this sometimes in Buddhist centers, yeah, especially around the guru. We're all competing to be close to the guru, you know? In my day, when we lived in India, the competition, there are two things I competed with people about. I wanted to be able to make the tea, to offer the tea to Rinpoche. Because we hear you create so much merit by offering to the guru, skies of merit. So I wanted to create skies of merit by offering tea to my guru. But I wasn't in charge, I wasn't the cook. Yeah? So I wanted to get rid of the cook, get her out of the kitchen, so that I could make a cup of tea, and be so humble and devoted and offer it to my guru, so that I could accumulate those skies of merit. Yeah, but I wasn't the cook. Mind you, okay, the guru cherishes sentient beings more than they cherish themselves. But no way was I going to make tea for the other people in the center. Because they are ordinary sentient beings. I don't create skies of merit offering to them. This is my way of thinking, even though that's who my teacher cherished more than himself, I was not going to make tea for them. I was not going to wash their dishes. I'm better than that. Yeah? So that's one aspect of the jealousy and the competition between disciples. A lot of us wanted to be the one who offered tea. Okay. The other thing we competed about was, I know I'm getting off topic, but a few personal stories don't hurt, okay? So another thing that at least I competed about was Rinpoche would sometimes invite people to come to his room and meditate in the morning. Yeah, so 4 o'clock in the morning, you tiptoe into Rinpoche's room. This was its Tushita. It was a very small room. Not many people could fit in. So if you were one of the privileged that was invited to go to Rinpoche's room to do Lama Chopa in the morning with Rinpoche, then you scored. You really made it big time, you know? Got to do Lama Chopa with Rinpoche at 4 a.m. But I got to do that a few times. But I was the one who was assigned to teach the Dharma course. Yeah, to lead meditations, to give the talks. I didn't get to go to do Lama Chopa with Rinpoche in the morning and create skies of merit, being in his holy presence, where it takes 45 minutes to offer your cup of tea. Yeah, I didn't get to do this, I had to go teach the lay people. I still had to wake up at 4 in the morning, but I had to go inspire them. Yeah, when they were asleep in morning meditation, and I had to give the Dharma talks while all these other people got to hang out close to the Guru. Oh! Yeah, I went crazy. Yeah, it took me years and years to realize that actually I had the privileged position of being able to teach the lay people and lead the meditation, and that my teacher trusted me to do that. At that time, I had no awareness. All I saw was they got to do something I didn't get to do. I mean, that's how immature I was, okay? Yeah? So don't compete with anybody else. Yeah? Don't compete. It drives you crazy and it wastes your life. So, that said, I love meeting people who say, when Rinpoche was here, he rode in my car. I got to drive Rinpoche around. He rode in my car. Did he ride in your car? Oh, poor you. He didn't ride in your car. He rode in my car. And also, look what I have. Here's a picture of me and Rinpoche, and he signed it. Do you have an autographed picture of yourself with the Guru? Do you? You don't. Oh, poor you. Poor you. Maybe if you hang around me, then you'll get to have it. Because I have a special relationship with the Guru. You see this all the time at Dharma centers. All the time. Yeah. And it shows how ignorant we sentient beings are. Yeah? It's ignorance in living color. I remember another time. This time I was at Potosan in China, Kuan Yin's holy mountain. And there's one place around the side of the mountain where it's said that many people have seen visions of Kuan Yin. So we went there one day. I was with some Chinese friends. And we went there, and there were some other people there visiting too, 2 women, and they were there. And so we were looking. There's a certain part in the wall that's open a little bit where they say that some people see Kuan Yin. So I looked, and I saw a stone wall. And the 2 ladies in front of me looked, and they said, "Oh, there's Kuan Yin. Yeah, she's so beautiful." And they looked at her for a while. "There's Kuan Yin. She appeared to us." And then after a while they said, "I think Kuan Yin must be tired. Well, she needs to rest. We'll leave now. And they left. Yeah. And then I left, and I went back to the place where I was staying and discovered that the police were looking for me. Because, you know, I'm a Tibetan Buddhist. I was giving, you know, mani pills to people. Yeah. So they wanted to know who I was. So we took a boat to one of the islands. Yeah. And that time I missed meeting the Chinese police. I did meet them another time. Yeah, when I was in the main, what's the name of the big temple in Beijing? Yeah, huge famous temple. Anyway, I went there. This time was a different pilgrimage. I was with some Singaporeans. And we went there, and I had mani pills, which, by the way, somebody asked me about yesterday, and I'll be giving those out at the end of the afternoon session. So, so you gotta stay until the afternoon. Otherwise, no mani pills. So that time, you know, so I had some mani pills, and I was giving them to people, you know, other Buddhists at the temple. And there was a plainclothes police officer who asked to speak to me. Of course, I don't know any Chinese. Yeah. So I had to call one of the Singaporeans to come and translate for me. And they took me into another room, and they asked me what I was doing, and I was saying I was giving out blessed pills, and, you know, you can't do that. And I wondered, why not? Yeah. Is there a law somewhere that you get, you know, I didn't ask them. I know not to mess with police. I was polite and sweet. Okay. Inside, I was going, Yeah. So they told me I couldn't do that. They made me promise I would never do it again, which I kind of made them think I promised, but I didn't really. And I had to sign a confession. Yeah. And then they let me go back and continue to bow and make offerings and prayers and do things like this. This was back in, when was this? 96, I think? So it was some time ago. Yeah, I haven't been back to mainland since then, although I would like to go. Yeah. Yeah, I've been to some of the holy mountains, but I haven't been to all of them, and they're quite inspiring, you know, when you go. Okay, enough stories. Do you learn something from the stories? Yeah? Okay. Okay. From our own experience, we know that our mind changes from moment to moment. I read that, didn't we? Didn't I? Okay. The mind has two natures. Now we're getting into some real nitty-gritty. First nature, its conventional nature, which is how it functions and relates to other things. And second is its ultimate nature, its actual mode of existence. The conventional nature of the mind, its clarity and cognizance, may be compared to pure water that is free from contaminants. When dirt is mixed into this water, its pure nature is obscured, although that pure nature is still there. Okay? Sometimes the dirt is stirred up and the water is more obscured than at other times. But no matter how much dirt is in the water, that dirt is not the nature of the water. The water can be purified and the dirt removed. Similarly, the mind is pure even when obscured by afflictions. Sometimes our mind is comparatively calm, and other times it is agitated by anger or attachment. These afflictions are temporary. Someone may be upset in the morning but relaxed in the afternoon. While the mind stream endures, anger is not always present in it. This is because anger and other afflictions have not entered the nature of the mind. Okay? So this is quite important, and this is the foundation of talking about Buddha nature. Yeah? That another example, I don't think it's here, but another example is the sky, the clear, open sky. Yeah, the sky, the nature of the sky is clear and open. It is free of clouds. Clouds may come and cover the sky so we can't see it. But the clouds are not the nature of the sky, and they can go away. Okay? So it is with the nature of our mind. Both the conventional and the ultimate nature of our mind, ultimately, at the deeper level, is completely clear and pure. It is covered by afflictions. Okay? But the afflictions are not in its very nature. And so because of that, the afflictions can be eliminated and we can become Buddhas. Okay? So understanding this, understanding our Buddha nature is incredibly important. This is the root of having valid self-confidence. Okay? So we often develop self-confidence based on external things. Oh, look, I have money. Oh, look, I have this position. Oh, look, I am young and attractive. Oh, look, I am athletic and strong. We develop self-confidence based on these external kinds of things. But all those things are transient, and they're not going to remain forever. They're things that are polluted by ignorance. So their nature is dukkha, they're going to vanish. So if our self-confidence is based on being young and healthy, what's going to happen to us when we get old? If our self-confidence is based on having money, what's going to happen to it when the stock market goes down? What if our self-confidence is based on having a certain job? What's going to happen to it when we get retrenched? Yeah. Everything, our whole life is going to disappear. Yeah. So from a Buddhist viewpoint, those things are not reliable bases for having self-confidence. Our Buddha nature, on the other hand, is a reliable basis because our Buddha nature is always there. It's eternal. It can never cease to exist. Yeah, it's always there, so the possibility of attaining full awakening is always present in us. It can never be removed, no matter what we do, no matter who we are. Okay? So this is the reason why we can always have stable self-confidence, no matter the state of our body. If we're getting old and weak and, forgetful, we still have the Buddha nature. We can still have self-confidence, okay? This Buddha nature is also the reason why we can never say any person is evil. Yeah? A person's actions may be horrible, harmful, inappropriate, but the person who did them is not evil. That person has the Buddha nature. Even Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, they all had the Buddha nature. Okay? So, this is the foundation for optimism and hope. Yeah? In our world, there may be a lot of suffering, but there's always hope, and we can always be optimistic because the causes of suffering can be eliminated because they have not entered into the nature of the mind, and the nature of the mind is pure. Okay? So very important to remember this, and to really have faith in yourself and confidence in yourself that you can practice the path. Okay? One of my teachers, Geshe Nawang Dargye, very early on, he used to say, he said to me, if you can become enlightened, you can learn Tibetan. I still haven't learned Tibetan. Yeah? I'm sorry, Geshe-la. Yeah. I've learned some words here and there, but I cannot speak or translate. Yeah. But, this is the kind of thing we should say to ourselves when we feel that we can't do something. If I can become a Buddha, I can learn to ride a bicycle. Yeah. If I can become a Buddha, I could learn Tibetan. I could also learn Chinese. I know more words in Tibetan than Chinese. I know ni hao and mayo and amitofo, and that's the extent of my Chinese. Although I would love to speak Chinese. Yeah, I would love to be able to communicate directly in Chinese and in Tibetan. But English is the only language I do somewhat well with. Yeah, so aspiring for future lives. Yeah, but that's assuming I'm born in a world where they speak Chinese and Tibetan, and I may not be. Okay. Anyway, yeah, important to remember our Buddha nature. The mind may be colored by different emotions at different times. Anger and loving kindness are opposite. They cannot be manifest in our mind at the same time, although they may arise at different times. Even people such as Hitler or Stalin, who had great hatred, felt love for their family members and children. The fact that the mind can be dominated by anger at one time and by an opposite emotion, such as love, at another, indicates that the emotions are not in the nature of the mind. The mind itself is pure. It is like colorless water that can be colored by a variety of hues or by none at all. Our body is like a house, and the mind is its inhabitant. As long as the body remains, the mind is a long-term resident. However, various mental factors, which includes emotions and attitudes, are like visitors. One day resentment comes, another day compassion comes, but neither remains long. While both are visitors, one visitor is respectful, useful, and pleasant, like someone reliable whom we can trust and want to make a member of the family. We invite that visitor, like love or compassion, to remain in the house all the time and cultivate the conditions so that she will. Meanwhile, the other visitor is rude and disturbs our own and others' peace. We don't want him to visit, let alone move in. So we're talking about anger, resentment here. So we do not invite him in and evict him if he sneaks in. Similarly, it is possible to banish anger and cultivate compassion limitlessly, making it our constant companion. Okay, so that's talking about the conventional nature. Now he's going to go into the ultimate nature of the mind. So the ultimate nature of the mind is its emptiness of independent or inherent existence. Inherent existence is a false mode of existence that we superimpose on all phenomena. So we talked about this yesterday afternoon, remember? Yeah, we think things have their own independent essences, that they're findable within an object, and they don't. Yeah, those flowers, remember we dissected the flower, couldn't find the flower. Okay, so we believe that phenomena have their own findable essence that makes them what they are, that they exist independently of all other factors such as their causes and parts. In fact, they are empty of all such fabricated ways of existing because they exist dependent on other factors. In the 8,000-line Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the Buddha says, "The mind is devoid of mind, for the nature of mind is clear light." I'll read that again. The mind is devoid of mind, for the nature of mind is clear light. Okay, difficult to understand this. His Holiness is now going to explain it. The mind is devoid of mind. This leads us to investigate what the mind actually is, its ultimate mode of existence, how it really exists. The mind refers to the clear and cognizant conventional nature of mind. When we search that clear and cognizant nature, we cannot find something that is the mind. Just like when we searched the flower yesterday with the petals and stamens and pistils and stem, we can't find the flower. When we search clarity and cognizance, we cannot find something that is the mind, some self-enclosed entity that is the mind. If we were able to find a real mind, then the mind would inherently exist with its own independent essence. However, when we search to find the mind, we do not find the mind in the mind. Okay? When we search the flower, we do not find a flower in the flower. Okay? When we searched what we called the flower and took it apart, we didn't find a flower in what we had called the flower. So in the same way, when we search the clarity and cognizance, we don't find the mind, something we can identify as being the mind. Okay? So that's what it means when he says the mind is devoid of mind. The mind is devoid of an inherently existent mind. Okay? We do not find an inherently existent mind. That is why it says here that the mind is devoid of mind. The final nature of the mind, its ultimate mode of existence, is its emptiness of inherent existence. Since the mind is devoid of mind, meaning that the mind, the conventional mind, is devoid of being an inherently existent mind, okay, we might think that the mind does not exist at all if the mind is devoid of mind. But this is not the case. The words "the mind" indicate that the mind exists. It's the basis of our analysis. If it didn't exist, we couldn't talk about it. Okay? That the mind exists is shown by the fact that I can explain these statements due to the workings of my mind, and you can understand them due to the workings of your mind. Saying that the mind does not abide in the mind means that an inherently existent mind is not the final mode of existence of the mind. It does not mean that the mind does not exist at all. If the mind didn't exist at all, we wouldn't be here. We couldn't think, we couldn't perceive, there wouldn't even be a person, because without the mind, there is no person. Okay? But there is no inherently existent mind. There's only a dependently existent mind. The mind exists, but it is empty of inherent existence. This is the meaning of the phrase, "the nature of mind is clear light." This ultimate This ultimate nature of the mind is pure in that it is free from inherent existence. But the fact that the mind is empty of inherent existence alone does not mean the afflictions such as ignorance, anger, and attachment can be eliminated from it. So just the fact that the mind lacks inherent existence, just that doesn't indicate that the afflictions can be eliminated from it. These afflictions also lack inherent existence. Okay? But we cannot say they are pure by nature. Okay? So our afflictions also lack inherent existence, but they're certainly not pure. Ignorance is a mental factor that grasps phenomena as inherently existent with their own independent essences. It is the source of all other disturbing emotions, such as anger, craving, jealousy, and conceit. The fact that the mind, as well as all other phenomena, do not exist inherently means that the ignorance that grasps the mind as inherently existent contradicts reality. Okay, so we have this ignorance in our mind right now. It misapprehends how things exist. It contradicts how things exist. So we say it contradicts reality. Okay? If the mind did inherently exist, ignorance would be a correct mind that sees reality. In that case, it could not be eliminated. Okay? So if you have a correct mind that knows reality, you can't make that go away. Nothing can overcome it. But if you have an incorrect mind that apprehends the opposite of reality, then wisdom can overcome that mind. Okay? However, since ignorance perceives the opposite of reality, it can be eliminated by the wisdom that sees reality correctly. the wisdom that realizes the emptiness of inherent existence. Because ignorance and other afflictions are erroneous mental factors that lack an inherently existent foundation, they are not embedded in the nature of the mind and can be eliminated forever. Just as clouds temporarily obscure the open sky, although they are not the nature of the sky, ignorance and other afflictions temporarily obscure the pure nature of the mind. But unlike clouds, which once gone can reappear, ignorance and afflictions, once they have been eliminated from their root by wisdom, can no longer obscure the mind. So it's possible to eliminate all those obscurations and afflictions forever. Meanwhile, other mental factors such as love, compassion, and fortitude do not depend on ignorance to exist and therefore remain as part of our mind stream forever. Okay? Okay. So, to be continued in the afternoon. Yeah. So, we'll dedicate the merit and then offer the food.
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. So we'll pause between each of the 5 contemplations to reflect. I contemplate all the causes and conditions and the kindness of others by which I have received this food. I contemplate my own practice, constantly trying to improve it. I contemplate my mind, cautiously guarding it from wrongdoing, greed, and other defilements. I contemplate this food, treating it as wondrous medicine to nourish my body. I contemplate the aim of Buddhahood, accepting and consuming this food in order to accomplish it. Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow, through purity freeing from attachment, through virtue freeing from the lower realms, unique, supreme, ultimate reality. To the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities. To the Sangha I bow, to the Supreme Teacher, the precious Buddha, to the Supreme Refuge, the holy precious Dharma, to the Supreme Guides, the precious Sangha. To all the objects of refuge we make this offering. May we and all those around us never be separated from the triple gem in any of our lives. May we always have the opportunity to make offerings to them, and may we continuously receive their blessings and inspiration to progress along the path. By seeing this food as medicine, I will consume it without attachment or complaint, not to increase my arrogant strength or good looks, but solely to sustain my life.
Okay. So, while you're enjoying lunch, think about what we talked about this morning and discuss it with whoever you're having lunch with. Okay? In fact, I'll read you some of the questions you can discuss. Okay? The conventional nature of the mind is clarity and cognizance, meaning the mind can reflect and cognize objects. The conventional nature of the mind is pure. The afflictions have not entered into its nature, although they may temporarily color or obscure the mind. Second point to talk about. Third, the body is immaterial in nature. It is like a house, and the mind is its immaterial inhabitant. And fourth, the ultimate nature of the mind is empty of inherent existence. It lacks any essence that is findable when we search for how the mind ultimately exists. Okay? So, at lunchtime, talk about the mind, talk about science, talk about the stories you heard. Don't gossip about other people. Okay? So we'll meet back at 1:30.